Welcome to Soul Chats with Psychic Medium Dani Jo. I'm excited to have you here tonight. I am not hosting a guest on tonight's episode, and I have some great conversation for discussion. And so if you're finding me here, just know that you can comment. If you give StreamYard permission, it will show your name. Otherwise, I am pulling up my page so that I may see who's commenting. And thank you for joining me. So it has been on my mind lately to talk about spirituality, to talk about integrity, to talk about judgment, to talk about what these things truly mean to us. And I find that we're in the middle of a time of life with an election coming up, that people find themselves more and more justified in allowing themselves to be judgmental, critical, harsh, mean and violent, even, if you will, at this time of life, because they feel so justified in what they believe in and what they feel. So I want to just kind of back up a little bit and kind of start from what I feel spirituality is. And for me, spirituality is growing as a spiritual being to understand life, why things happen, having compassion, acceptance, understanding, unconditional love, and forgiveness for people in the world, people in our life, and for ourselves. And this is really the true reason that we're here, is those reasons to give acceptance, forgiveness, and unconditional love. And so we're constantly tempted through our life's experience to have incidents where we may cast judgment or anger or not be able to forgive. And that's why it's constantly put on our plate, is because we need to learn to overcome those things. And spirituality is acceptance of all things. It's not being critical for people who believe in religion. It's just accepting that that's where they're at and allowing them to have their own peace as well as you have yours. And so, COVID brought a big division for us, similar to elections do. And right now we're obviously in the midst of an election year. So there's a lot of judgment out there in the world right now. And I want to show you how it's so easy to fall into that trap of judging other people and casting your emotions towards others. So regardless of what your political beliefs are, everyone has an opinion, okay? And we form these opinions based on our life experience, what we've been taught, what our learned truths are versus our real truths. And I might talk on that later. But we have these opinions and we feel very strongly in them, that these are what we believe to our core. Now, I want you to understand that everyone has that same feeling. They have their own opinions and their own judgments and their own feelings about things, and they feel very strongly about it. And nobody is going to tell us who is right or wrong, because there isn't just one way. So the definite strength you feel in what you believe, other people feel that too. So when you have those two contrasting opinions and ideas going against each other, this is what creates that division and that wall and that judgment, and in history, war and defiance and so on and so forth. So if instead we can have an opinion and have our feelings and have our ideas, yet accept and create space for everyone to have theirs as well, we can have that acceptance and that spiritual development, that spiritual growth that says that no one is better than another, that my opinion is not better than someone else's. And when it comes to politics, this can get really hard to see through because politics affects our whole entire life, our livelihoods, our, everything. But ultimately, in the end, this life is about how we walk through it, what we do with our time while we're here. And it's not about casting judgment and being right and having everyone see our opinion as true and valid, because ultimately nobody's is. And long after we're gone, our soul is going to live with the consequences of what we did while we're here. So being a person of true integrity and truly caring about other people and honoring and respecting other people is so important. So I'll give you a really good example. And if you're someone that said this, don't feel bad that I'm bringing it up. Most of you know that my mom's husband was her abuser, and he is the reason that she passed in 2021. And occasionally I'll post updates about what's going on with that or his parole and different things. Or I might post photos or education about our nonprofit, Shirley Speaks. And I occasionally have someone comment and say, I hope he rots in hell, or I hope he got what he deserved. And while I get where these comments are coming from because they're an emotionally charged comment, ultimately to wish harm on someone is no better than causing harm. And trust me, I believe that fully, that there is no difference. It is the integrity of a person that shows what you're capable of if you think it's okay to wish harm on someone else. And there are many times as a human being, I have felt very strongly about him or what I hope for his future. But ultimately, in the end, I want healing for him. I want closure. I want peace. I want peace for everyone in my family. And that doesn't come from getting enjoyment from seeing someone suffer. You might think it would, but it doesn't. So wishing harm on someone is no better than actually causing harm in Spirit's eyes, because it's about integrity and who you are as a soul and as a human being. So be cautious with the words that you use and the intention you put behind things, because this says a lot about you. And, people who are out there just slinging hate and judgment in regards to politics and who's right and who's wrong, ultimately, in the end, it's more about how we supported each other and how we showed respect and how we handled these negotiations and conversations. That's going to be what we leave behind as our legacy and is going to be talked about us. And when we get to our judgment day, if you want to call it that, having to explain all of the things that we did in this lifetime while we were here, you're going to have to, own up to that someday. And at that point, your spiritual soul isn't going to really care who the president was or what happened after the election or before the election. But you're certainly going to care how your impact on other people affected them and yourself. And so take a moment to take stock in where you place judgment on so many people. I know that judgment can come in many forms, not just politics or religion. It can come in the way that we interact with our families and treat our children for maybe their decisions or thinking they could have done things differently or better or our way, which again is not the right way, but it's our opinion. And just because we have more experience doesn't mean our way is better, because we already lived life and we know the outcomes of walking this path or that path. The thing is, everybody has to walk their own path for them to grow as a soul and to live the experiences that shape them into who they are. So try to set your judgments aside and be the guiding light for your children by being there as an example, but also not pushing your ideas or agendas on them, because they have to walk their own journey. And as some of you know, it doesn't matter how hard you try, they're not going to follow your ideas just to be defiant, because some of us have children that are strong-minded and strong-willed. So I definitely want to encourage your ability to engage in all of this negativity right now with the election coming up. One of the other things that really hurts my heart a little bit in this election time is all of the memes and videos and things that make fun of the candidates for the presidency or politicians and things like this. And while I know they're public figures and they're out there in the public eye, what I always think of was, what if that was your son, your brother, your dad? Would you feel it was justified for someone to post that if it were your family member? Because I'm pretty sure you wouldn't feel that. But because it's not someone emotionally connected to you, it feels acceptable, or because they are out there in the public eye. But ultimately, look at what that says about you. Look at what that says about you as a person, and really go within and ask yourself, is that who I am? Is that what I want to be remembered for? Is making fun of people or finding it acceptable to talk down to or shame people or whatnot. And I get it. It's what sells. Media sells these kinds of things. It's what gathers attention. But that only is because we allow that. And it doesn't have to be that way. So don't engage in that kind of mockery and attention-seeking situations. And we won't have more of it, because if there isn't any draw to it, people will stop using it and stop finding it acceptable. With all that being said, I want to remind you too that we're human beings and that we're not perfect and that we're going to make mistakes. And that's the beauty of why we're here, is that we're learning and growing, and we're not going to get through this life perfect. We are going to make mistakes, every one of us. And the goal is to continue to be better than we were yesterday, and to continue to see what we could change in ourselves to make this world a better place. How can we contribute to the greater good of the world and everyone's growth? So just some things I want you to think about. And if you think that you cannot make an impact on this world because you're one person, you're wrong. You can make an impact. I often think about a butterfly or a bee and how many actual flowers those animals touch in one lifetime through their pollination. And you think that they have such a short life and they probably don't make a big difference, but they do a huge impact, as well as do each of us that lives in this lifetime. And if just one of you encouraged a family member or a friend to not engage in that negativity, imagine if they also took that to heart and encouraged one other person and one other person. And we had this huge ripple effect out there in the world. We would start a whole movement of let's support each other instead of tear each other down. And ultimately, we are one people. We are one being. We are all connected through this web of light. And we are not divided the way that the world makes us feel divided. Ultimately, our souls are gender neutral. They're not female, they're not male, they're not a race, they're not a color. They are a vibration of light and love and acceptance and healing. And that is who we are at the true nature of our core. So exemplifying that and living that in this lifetime while we're here is part of what we're meant to do. But we get so bogged down by the daily stuff and the life that we're living that we forget that we are a spiritual being who has a purpose here. And we're powerful. so much more powerful than you will ever realize in this lifetime. But you have the ability to change things within yourself, within your community, within the world, and making an impact is worth it. It is worth it. Hi, Corrine. Nice to see you. There are so many studies out there that will show you the positivity versus the negativity and the impact that will make. There's studies that you can look up specifically as far as water that is frozen with positive words around it or negative words around it. Sound, playing, screaming and toxic sound near plants versus beautiful music, the difference that is seen in that. You can see it physically with your own eyes. The water that I was talking about will form amazing, beautiful patterns with the soothing words and chaos with the negative words. So if nature can be impacted that much by the positive versus the negative, imagine what our souls could create in this world if it were a more positive place. So I wanted to just share a little bit with you about my feelings about that. If anybody has any stories or questions, feel free to share. And hey, Kim, nice to see you. Know that if you are a person who engages in the negative, don't feel bad about that or shame yourself or feel like, oh, she's talking about me, because it is a reality for many of us that we do that at some point in our life. And it's through awareness and understanding that we can create change for that. There is a beautiful book by Gabrielle Bernstein called Judgment Detox. And it actually gives you some great techniques on how to detox your thought, your emotions, and give some forgiveness. And if you've not read that book and want to work on your judgment, that's a fantastic one to work on. She does some tapping for judgment. And it's amazing how you will find yourself judging people for the same things that you don't want to be judged for. A couple of weeks ago, woke up and thought to myself, I'm going to be really conscious of my thoughts today and see how often I judge people out in the general public. So right away, I got in the car and started driving, and there was a person walking down the street in some very unusual attire, which instantly got my judgment thoughts riled up. So I recognized it, and I recognized it wasn't my place to judge what they were wearing. Maybe it was the only thing they had. Maybe they were going to some event. I didn't know the whole story, and I didn't have to know the whole story because it wasn't my place to judge. So I recognized that within 5 minutes of being in the vehicle, I started judging. And it's through the awareness and recognizing it that we can create the change. So instead of being hard on myself, I was just aware. This is where and when I'm finding myself judging. So be conscious of it, to not create the judgment thoughts and to just let them go. And in my mind, I said, more power to you. And I just sent him a little love through my heart with a smile and thought to myself, I hope nobody else judges him today. So just know that in our nature as a human being, we are going to judge, because from the minute we are born, we are judged about every single thing that happens. We are judged for the size of baby we are, how well we do on APGAR scores, when we do things such as rolling over or smiling, and size, length, weight. These are all judgments that are constantly put on us. We get to school and we have scores on whether or not we can tie our shoes or know our ABCs yet. And so all of that judgment seems to be commonplace for us, and we don't know any different. But ultimately, in the end, I wish judgment was gone altogether, because nobody fits in a box. We're not all the same. All children are not going to do the same things at the same time. And if we let go of those judgments and labels, we would have less emotional burdens to carry as a human being in the first place. So I guess my advice to you is be cautious with your thoughts and your words throughout this election and time of life where there's so much ease in creating division for us. And love the people who have differing opinions from you and encourage them to understand that everyone has a right to their own opinions. And if you can't convey that and they can't see that, love them anyway. But it's okay to also have boundaries with people. I wanted to share one more thing. When I ask Spirit, why are we here? What is it we're here to accomplish? And what do I need to focus on? They tell me 3 things. And this is acceptance. So accepting everything at face value, where they are, for who they are, and not wanting for them to be different or for the situation to be different. So acceptance, radical acceptance. The second one is forgiveness. And this is probably the most hard for people because oftentimes people are not sorry for what they do and they're not going to do things different because they're not going to change. But you can change and you can give forgiveness, not for them, but for you, because not holding on to that anger allows you to heal and it allows you to show compassion and understanding. And maybe at some point in their life, they'll take from that and also help someone else. Yeah, absolutely, Kim. Judgment is very much taught to us from the minute we're born as acceptable. And it's not, because you are no one's judge and jury. You are no one's higher power. We are all equal on this planet, and we all have a right to our opinion and what we need and what we want and what we believe. And so mutual respect is so important rather than judgment. And it's hard to give that to people who aren't going to give it to you in return, but it shows you that you are the bigger person and you are the better person for allowing yourself to give it when it's not being given in return. And the third one is unconditional love. And this means you are going to love people regardless of where they're at. You're going to love them for who they are. You're going to love them regardless of their faults, their screw-ups, their insecurities, and the pain that they've caused you, because you are deserving of love, and so are they. And unconditional love can be very hard. For me, forgiveness tends to be the hardest one, but acceptance, forgiveness, and unconditional love, if you remember those 3 things throughout your life and focus on giving them fully and unconditionally, you will probably master more than most people in this lifetime. And you're right, it is hard, because if it were easy, we would be able to master this program of life and not have to reincarnate, right? We'd already be done with the lessons and be over it. So of course it's hard. And unfortunately, God gave us as human beings emotions and feelings, and this is what really gets in the way. So remember that. Yeah, that's a good one. Your kids with different abilities taught you true unconditional love. That's 100% valid, but I'm going to bring up some subjects with that statement that will help other people understand why it doesn't always flow throughout your entire livelihood in life. So having kids with different abilities taught you true unconditional love. Yes, you learn to love them in spite of all of those things. However, there are other people in your life who also challenge you, who you aren't able to see unconditional love for. And so unconditional love for everyone is the goal, is that we want to see that even if that person is not going to be a good version of themselves or be kind to you in your life, or you're not going to be able to have them in your life, you can still love them unconditionally for who they are and knowing that they have faults and insecurities. But yes, kids with different abilities will definitely bring some unconditional love to you, as well as do pets, because pets expect nothing in return from you. And that's what we should expect, nothing in return from anyone, because no one owes you anything. They don't owe you to show up for you. They don't owe you all of those things that you're not getting from them that make you want to not like them. And we all have family members who don't allow us to find unconditional love because of the way that they act to us in our life or act to other people. But what I'll tell you about that is they were the ones who came into your life to give you that lesson. And maybe they're not as far along as you, or maybe they're meant to play the villain role for you so that you do have to learn unconditional love. And that's the hardest place to find it. Pets are the best. Hey, Cheryl, that brings the gangster out in us. You're so funny. Yeah, I totally get that. I totally get that. Yeah, you know, when you just think about people in your life who challenge you to your core, and the way that you would feel justified in treating them or thinking bad things about them, that's, again, your inability to see them through the eyes of love, see them through the eyes of unconditional love and forgiveness. So remember that it's not personal when it feels personal, but it is a lesson. It is a test. Are you passing that test? Are you failing that test? I know that I know that in my mind, God does not stand at the pearly gates and want to look at a person and judge them for what they're wearing, whether they have clean skin, whether they are overweight or beautiful or scary looking. God is accepting of everyone at face value where they're at, and is always going to be. And as hard as that is for us to accept in our life, that is where we need to be, is to be like God, to be understanding of every person and every situation. And it's hard because our emotions and our humanness get in the way. And absolutely, taking it personally is a very tough subject, but that's also another good book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. One of his 4 agreements is take nothing personally, because it's not personal. It feels personal because you have work to do on yourself, and we all have work to do on ourselves. Yeah. Yeah, tough subject, but I've been really feeling called to talk about this with it being an election year, and hey, Kim, the name of that book, it's we did a unit on the 4 agreements. Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 agreements, but I will if that's what you're asking. Anyway, I just want you to know that if this is hitting you in the heart, if you're one of those people that is judgmental, as we all are, it's, you know, just an opportunity for you to stop and take stock and look at yourself in ways that you can create more positive vibrations in the world than negative. Because imagine if there were 10 people standing on the street, and 8 out of 10 of them are talking negatively, and the other 2 are just standing there wishing they didn't have to be there, versus maybe one of them says to the next person something positive, and that makes them realize, hey, I'm kind of being negative right now. And then they start realizing they want to be positive. And then a whole trickle effect happens. And all 10 people realize, I'm putting negative out in the world. I need to stop that. And I need to start saying positive things. Imagine all of that love and light and vibration that is put out to the world. Those words you speak into existence every single day create energy. And that energy is a vibration of negative or positive energy. And if you can imagine all the negative out there in the world that we are fighting right now energetically against, it's toxic and it's hard and it's exhausting. But if you combat that with all those people out there by going out there and saying, love your neighbor, be kind to people you disagree with, have love for everybody, kumbaya, my friends, or whatever it is you say. Imagine all the positive energy you're putting out there, and maybe, just maybe, you will affect one person who might affect one more, and the trickle effect happens, right? Don't discount the possibility of you being a light that sparks other people's light, because it can happen. It can happen. You've really helped me out in all this. 5 years ago, I would be wearing orange. Yeah. Well, just know that it's healthy to have different opinions. It's okay to be on different sides of the fence as far as politics go. What's not okay is to place your judgments and criticisms and harsh words on other people. It's not okay to make fun of people and degrade people in the name of politics. That, again, it just says something about who you are. I would never in a million years post a toxic meme that is making fun of someone, even if I felt like everyone else was doing it. And why would I not do that? Because that's not who I am. And I don't care if it's the president of the United States or my next door neighbor. I still care about how I treat other people. And that's what it comes down to. Your integrity and your intention. It says everything about you. And in this spiritual world, this was another subject I was going to hit on and forgot. There are so many people justifying their judgments and their criticisms because they're a spiritual leader, yet they don't work with integrity. They don't care about feelings. They don't care about uplifting the whole world. And I am going to tell you right now, if that is the kind of spiritual person that you are or you're following, you're not following a true spiritual person, because a spiritual person wants the best for everyone, sees through the eyes of love that we are all the same, and wants everyone to rise. Because if we all rise, we all rise. And the goal is enlightenment for everyone, no one left behind. And if your spiritual leaders or teachers don't follow that, question what their integrity is and question your own integrity if you don't feel that. Because ultimately, we want the best for the whole world, everyone. Everyone. Because even the people who are out there doing bad things in the world are beautiful spiritual souls who have lost their way, and they need someone to guide them back. They absolutely need someone to guide them back. So I hope that you will forgive me for being on my soapbox tonight about this, but I really wanted to put this out there and hope that it makes an impact on somebody in some way to create a positive vibration in the world. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all going to be okay, or we're all not going to be okay, regardless of who the president is or what's happening in the world. And really, that's just one small part of our life. There's so many other things going on. And I agree, politics are important. We need to be educated. But ultimately, we are not a nation that is by the people and for the people anymore. And unless that were to change, there's not a lot of big change that we can create in politics. There's so much, shall I say, deception and corruption, that it's going to take an overhaul probably to change that. But I'll leave that right there. And the best we can hope for is for our economy to get a little bit better and for our country to be safe. And ultimately, everything else is on our shoulders as far as happiness and completing our goals as a spiritual soul. So thank you for being with me tonight. Thank you for listening. And remember that the spammers are so busy tonight. I see them getting active. Do not respond to someone who reaches out to you about inboxing them for a reading. No one with integrity works in that manner. They're just showing up right before I get to talk about integrity. But I will go ban them shortly. So do not respond to people who reach out to you that way. Even if they were a true and honest spiritual healer, that is not the way they would work. So thank you for following me tonight. Thank you for listening. And I will see you again soon on another episode of Soul Chats. Good night, everybody.